Hi everyone, welcome back or welcome to the Aural Theory series. My name is Dr. Julia Alford, and for this lesson I am coming to you from a random hotel room somewhere in the Midwest of America. So we're going to do things a little bit differently, but that's okay. We'll get it sorted out. For this lesson we are going to take a look at applied chords. If you don't know what that is, we're going to jump into it. If you haven't been keeping up with this, if you haven't worked through diatonic harmony, for harmonic dictation, I'd recommend taking a look at I'll put an iCard up to the series. I'll actually link down below the full video series from diatonic harmony that I just wrapped up. And today we are going to jump into chromatic harmony. Why is it called chromatic harmony? Because we use chromatic pitches, so pitches that are not found in the traditional major scale or harmonic minor scale. We do have a couple harmonic pitches in the minor scale, so or chromatic pitches, so you've already seen this a little bit, but we're going to take it to a new level today and jump into chromatic harmony. And it's going to start with creating dominant chords on different scale degrees. So I'm going to do a brief overview of this, but let's jump in and go over and take a look at this. So we have here a just basic 1-5-1 chord in the key of A flat major, which is our key that our first dictation is going to be in. So you get a little bit of a preview of that. All right, so if we listen to this, you'll get a feeling for what this sounds like. You're not going to hear the bottom chords. And please forgive the Sibelius MIDI. Okay, so what's going on here? So we have a 5-7 chord, E, G, B, and D. I have it sort of condensed down in the bottom, but that so you can hear. So E, G, E flat, G, B flat, D flat, which gives us our dominant sounding chord. Or I'll just play that actually as the blocked chords. And that's actually not a very good representation because there's a couple things about functional harmony that come into play just as a quick lesson. So in any given dominant 7 chord, the leading tone, which in A flat major is T, that has to go up to Do. If at all possible, the leading tone has to resolve up to Do. If it's in an outer voice, so Do, the bass or the soprano, it has to resolve up. If it's an inner voice, there's some exceptions, but here the leading tone is going up to Do, and Fa, which is the 7th of the 5-7 chord, really in any 7th chord, the 7th has to resolve down. So here, the 7th, or Fa, in A flat major is going down. Now, for our purposes, so we don't get like super confused thinking in multiple keys, let's just think about it as the 3rd of the dominant 7th chord has to go up. Most importantly, the 7th of the dominant 7th chord, no matter what key it's in, has to resolve down. That's going to help you figure out some pitches. Okay. So that's what's going on here, and that's why we have an incomplete chord for the last chord because of certain voice leading rules. I could have technically have frustrated this leading tone down, but I chose not to. Either is fine when it's in an inner voice. Okay, so what we're doing with applied chords is, you'll also, by the way, your teacher might call it secondary dominance, totally fine too, or secondary leading tone chords. I'm going to call it applied chords. I think it's slightly more, it just works better in my brain. I actually don't want to say that either is better. But so for applied chords, we're taking a different chord in the scale and we're doing a temporary tonicization on it. Or in simple language, we're making that chord feel like tonic for a brief second, and then we're going to go back, okay, to our home key. This is different than a modulation. It's absolutely not a modulation. We'll talk about that more in future videos. But in this progression here, we have a 1 chord, And then we want to get to the 5 chord, but we're going to add a little extra spin to it, or a little extra color. And we're elaborating on the discussion. Remember our discussion of you're on the train, you're looking out the window, you're looking at things. We're going from black and white to color. Okay, so we're adding some more description to our scene. We're making it a bit more interesting to listen to, etc. All the things. So in here, if we want to create a temporary tonicization of the 5 chord, which is E flat, G, B flat, just for the purpose of discussion, I'll add that 5th on there, in the key of A flat. We would build a 5/7 chord in the key of E flat. So we're going to look at our second chord that we're going to, the 5 chord, and we're going to ask ourselves, what is the dominant chord of that chord? So we're in A flat, but we're asking, what is the dominant chord in the key of E flat? The 5th scale degree, or the 5th above E flat, is B flat. So we're going to build a dominant quality chord on B flat. So B flat, D natural, because we need this bottom chord to be major. Otherwise, it would be with the key signature, it would be just B flat, D flat, G flat. So it would sound like this: B flat, D flat, F, A flat. It's just a minor 7 chord. We want it to be dominant, so we need a major triad with a minor 7th. That's our dominant chord. So we have to raise that 3rd. You cannot alter the root. Okay, so you have to alter any notes besides the root of the chord. And you have to keep that triad structure, or of the intervals of the 3rd. Okay, so no, you can't use enharmonic equivalents or anything like that. So we're going to be B flat, D, F, A flat. And if you were able to pick that out, that is our dominant sound. And then if we look at our voice leading, the root of the chord goes to the root of the next chord. The leading tone goes to the root. The 5th of the chord can go either direction, and the 7th of the chord has to go down, so we're actually going to get rid of that B flat. If we orchestrate it out, we've got 1, 5, 7 of 5, and that's how we're going to write it. You can also use an arrow, but for typing in a score, it's easier to just use the slash. 5, 7 of 5, 2 of 5. Okay, and then let's listen to how it sounds real quick. Okay, so you can feel if we just kept going in the key of E flat, that would make sense, because now we feel like we're in E flat, and it's a bit of an abridged version, right? You'll hear this more when we get to the dictations. Okay, another thing, because we altered the 3rd of the chord and not the 7th of the chord, or it actually doesn't matter if you alter the 7th chord, but because we altered the 3rd of the chord, we could have just a 5 of 5 without the 7th, and here's what that sounds like. Okay, it's not as strong, but sometimes that's what you want. You want just like a little zhush on it. Okay, so if you had seen this, for example, let's get rid of that natural, put that back to D flat. If you saw those chords, you would say, oh yeah, it's a 1, 2, 5. Okay? But because we add the natural onto it, making it a major chord, it's not this. Okay? It is a 5 of 5. You will not have a major 2 chord unless it's a Neapolitan, but that's a completely different animal. So if you hear a major chord with the 2nd scale degree as the root, it's a 5 of 5 chord. That's it. Okay, that's how we're going to add, because remember, we're always talking about function. So what is the function of this chord as it goes to the next chord, and what is the purpose that it's serving in the progression? Okay, I want to take a look at a couple more things. So you could also put it in first inversion, which gives you a root motion of 1. So you get that tritone, and then the tritone resolves up. So here's what that sounds like. So that's a 5, 6, 5 of 5. Okay, it's fine. So that's one example. So usually you'll have applied chords in root position or first inversion. That's what I'm going to give to you. Your teacher might throw them out. You could also have in second inversion and third inversion. All different combinations are possible. You can also have applied leading tone chords. I'm not going to get into those yet, but they do exist, and it's kind of a more advanced chromatic idea. So next we have, and this is the last one that I'm going to get into, you can basically tonicize any chord that's not diminished. So in minor, you're never going to have a 5 of the diminished 2 chord, okay? Or you're never going to have a 5 of the diminished 7 chord. But the 1 in major, the 1, the 2, the 3, the 4, the 5, and the 6 are all fair game. Well, the 1 is already, sorry. The 2, the 3, the 4, the 5, or the 6 can all be tonicized or made. You can have applied chords for all those. In minor, it's only the 3, 4, 5, and 6 that get applied chords, okay, because the 2 is diminished. Once we add in that Neapolitan chord later, well, that's a different animal, but we'll get into that when we get into it. Okay, so forget I said anything. So the 4, I like to point out the 4 because we can't have a 5 of 4 without the 7th, because if you look at this, if I take away that 7th, it's just another 1 chord. This is just 1, 1, 4. If I did that, it'd be 1, 1, 4. Okay, it's only with that 7th scale degree. Even that would be a 1, 7, which again, we don't really have that a whole lot. But so this is a major triad with a minor 7th. Now, this is in major only, because if you're in minor, maybe I'll look at that in a future video. If you're in minor, the 1 chord is minor, and then if you made it major, it would change the quality of it, but it's not very strong, so I think it's pretty rare. Anyway, so you add that flat 7 on it. It's now dominant, so a major triad with a minor 7th, you have 5, 7 of 4. Okay? So let's listen to how that sounds. So if you hear a repeating do or tonic, but you hear a dominant sound on the 2nd chord, it's a good chance you have an applied chord of 4. So let's listen. Nice, I like it. And you, by the way, you don't have to come to these from a 1 chord. That could come from a 5 or any number of combinations. Really, this would be strengthening the predominant section instead of the tonic expansion, right? So these would be an elaboration in the tonic expansion or a cadence. This would be the 5 of 4, 5, 7 of 4 would be elaboration on the predominant section. All right, so for the dictations, just to clarify something, for this lesson, we're going to, when we're listening to that function, we're going to first make a note of any dominant sounding chords that we hear. So you would make a little note over this chord, like a little asterisk or something. If you're listening for the predominant section, different people might say this different way. You could say, well, it's this chord because that's where the strong predominant actually happens. But if you're listening for the start of the strong predominant, you could label it the 5, 7 of 4, which is kind of why I'm not going to have you do that, especially my students for points. But if you're trying to create some kind of a map during that function listening, you can make a note of that. There you go. Okay, so this is what it looks like if it is a 5, 6, 5. So in that case, you have do, mi, fa in the bass. So that's another option if you're trying to keep track of all the different chords you could have for all the different solfege syllables. It starts to get a little bit hairy around here. Okay, so let's listen to how that sounds. That sounds like it really just needs to keep going. It sounds very incomplete. Okay, so let's do our first dictation. Like I said, it's an A flat major. It is 8 chords. The bass starts on do, the soprano starts on sol. So A flat in the bass, E flat in the soprano. And like I said, we're doing this a little bit differently. So I'm gonna have the computer play it because I didn't want to bring, I actually have a travel keyboard, but it was too much. So I didn't bring it. So we're just gonna listen to the MIDI. Okay, so the first two listenings, we're gonna do function. Like I said, you're gonna highlight or make an asterisk on any dominant sounding chord. So it could be the 5/7 right within the key, or just anytime you hear something that sounds dominant, make a little note just above the staff, like an asterisk or a D for dominant, or a triangle. You could do that too. All right, so let's give it a listen. Okay, so I changed my mind. We're going to do 3 listenings for function because I want you to take one more to grab those dominant sounding chords, and then we're going to do a final listening for, is it tonic expansion or is it alternative opening? Where does the predominant section start? All that kind of like secondary mapping stuff that I'd like you to get down on your paper. So listening number 2, again, mark those dominant sounding chords. Okay. Was there a cadential 6/4 chord? Was it tonic expansion? Was it alternative opening? What do you think? Let's do one more listening. Just make any decisions. Doesn't have to be, you don't have to have everything again. You can always just, the video, you can make up the video for more listenings if you need to. Okay, got it? Let's take a look at what we've got. So second chord, dominant sound. Fourth chord, dominant sound. Sixth chord, dominant sound. Okay, so we've got those dominant sounds. Also, let's talk about what's going on. It's a pretty simple progression. So we have a very short tonic expansion, and then we get into the predominant, and then we get into the dominant. There's no cadential 6/4, and then we have just like this very simple cadence. Okay, so let's grab that bass line with that in mind and see if you can get it. Let's just do 2 listenings for the bass, and you can grab more if you need to. Okay, listening number 2 for the bass. Remember, I'm going to raise that up a little bit louder for this one, so it doesn't get muddied. Okay, and then we'll talk about it. Okay, we're going to take a look at the bass in 3, 2, 1. Here you go. So we have a dominant sound on fa that resolves down to mi, and it's tonic expansion. So that tells us some things. I'll let you think about it. And then we have a dominant sound on do. What did we just learn? If you have a dominant sound on do, it is probably a applied chord of 4, and we do have do, fa. So if you had used those things together, that could kind of help you figure out where it was going. And this is where kind of going back and forth between the function and the pitches can help you out, because if you keep that in mind and you have a leap, it helps you figure out what that leap is. A dominant sound followed by a leap is probably going to be sol, do in the secondary key, right? And resolving the applied chord. Okay, and then we have, we actually didn't even go over chromatic solfege, but this would be fa, fi, sol. That tells us whenever we have a 5, 7 of 5, you're going to have fa, which is the third of the chord, becomes fi. Okay, and that resolves to sol. Now, note, this did not have a dominant sound. Okay, so that tells you something about that chord. So let's grab the soprano, and we're going to think through our chord options. Okay, so there's some skips or leaps in there, but work backwards. If you're stuck, think about where does it end and how did you get there? We'll talk about that more when we look at the answer, but here is our second listening. Okay, here we go. Soprano. We start on sol, and we just go sol, 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 fa, re, re, mi. Okay, so if you heard that was an imperfect, authentic cadence at the end, that would have helped you realize that it ends with mi in the soprano. It steps and then skips, oblique motion, because it's common tone, resolves up. That could actually go either way. So with that in mind, let's think through our chords. So just on your paper, sketch in your chord options. I'm not going to go over it in great detail, but think through what chord could you have for each chord, and think about what chords do you need to concentrate on to grab the quality, or to decide, is it a 5-7, is it a 5-7 a 5, or is it a 5, that kind of stuff. So also, just to reinforce, here is our sort of map, right? So we've got tonic expansion, and then I'm going to say that our predominant section starts here, and then our dominant section starts here. Okay, so there's some clues, and then this is our tonic. Okay, there's your clues. Pause the video, sketch out your chord possibilities, and then come back. And we're back. Let's grab 2 listings for those chord qualities. Okay, I'm going to slow the tempo down a smidge to give you some more concentration time. I'm also going to turn the volume up a little bit. Okay, let's check it out. What do you think? Grab more listens if you want. Let's take a look at the answer. And the answer, 3, 2, 1. Here you go. Good. So we have our tonic expansion 1, 5, 4, 2, 1, 6. Move that asterisk up. So that's your first dominant sounding chord. The second dominant sounding chord is the 5, 7 of 4, and that gets your predominant section started. And then we have the 5, 6, 5 of 5. So you could also technically have a 5, 6 of 5. And then that just resolves to a 5 chord. Typically a 5/7 of 5 or a 5/6/5 of 5 will just go to the triad. There are some occasions where it does just go straight to the 5/7. I'm going to avoid that for now. Okay, so and then we cadence on our tonic chord with our nice imperfect cadence. So like I said, that could have actually gone either way, re, do. Now, I do want to look at one more possibility for that. So, and I'm just going to show you and then we're going to listen to it. So this is the 5/6/5 of 5 or the 5/7 of 5 going through a cadential 6/4 chord to the 5/7. And in that case, it makes a little bit more sense. There's a little bit of a break to have the 5/7. You could do it as a 5/6/4 to a 5/3 or a 5/8/6/4 to a 7/5/3 and gets a cadential 6/4. So I just want to play that for you so you can hear how it sounds because my students may have that in the homework. Hint, hint. And let's take a look. Okay, kind of nice there. The next dictation we're going to do a second one is in F sharp minor. Do in the bass, do in the soprano, and let's give it a go. So again, we'll do 3 listenings. We'll do the first 2 to identify those applied chords, wherever you hear, or sorry, dominant sounding chords, wherever you hear them, whether it's within the key or not, just make a little asterisk, and then we'll do a last one to say, kind of gather some more information about it, tonic expansion, alternative opening, some combination of both, cadential 6/4, where are strong predominant and dominant sections, and let's try it out. Okay, one more time. Okay, so let's take a look at where there might be a dominant sounding chord. So I've put a star on the first chord of the second measure, or chord 3. I put one on the second chord of the third measure, or chord 2, 4, 6. And then I put one on the 8th chord, or the 4th chord of the 4th measure. Sorry. And the other thing I didn't say is that there are 9 chords total. Hopefully I'll put something on the screen so you see that. And so let's keep that in mind. Let's listen once more. What do you think about now the whole tonic expansion versus alternative opening thing can kind of get obscured with all the different chords we have going on, but see if you can hear that, and at least see if you can hear where the first strong predominant chord is, okay, and the dominant section. So listen for those and see if you can create some semblance of a map, even if it's just a draft, and then you can keep kind of finagling it as you get the bass line and the soprano and think through back and forth between what are my chords, what chords could I have here, etc. Okay, so one more listening for mapping function. Let's give it a try. Okay. Now let's move on to the bass line. Think about what you could have. Fill it in. The other thing is, remember, the thing we actually didn't talk about is that you can have chromatic pitches. Like in the previous dictation, we had phi in the bass. So you have to add that accidental in if it's raising up chromatically. But just keep an ear out for that in this progression if you have any of those too. Okay. Okay, let's do another listening for the bass. It's pretty loud, so hopefully you can get it. Okay, here is the bass in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so let's take a look at this bass. So Do, Mi, is this chord major or minor? If you caught that, that's going to be a determining factor, so you might want to back up and listen to the function question one more time. Then we have Sol. It's a dominant sound, and it goes to lay. Sorry. So lay. How do we talk about this? So lay is your 6th chord typically in minor. So that would be probably a minor 6. Now, if this is a major 3 and this is a minor 6, that means that we have alternative opening. I'm actually just going to go ahead and label that because that's what it is. Just call it to open. Okay. Now let's think about this. So a root position 5 chord or 5/7 chord can go to 6. It's fine. It's deceptive motion. But this is going to get really tricky, and we'll flush it out after we look at the answer. What is the 5th scale degree? What is the 5th above D? It's A. Okay, so if we built a 5/7 of D, it would be A, C sharp, E, G natural. Okay, and if we put that in first inversion, what would be in the bass? C sharp. So we've got some options here. So like I just kind of spelled out, this could be a 5. It could be a 5/7, or it could be Crazy Town 5/6/5 of 6. Nuts. Okay, so let's keep going. So then we have Fa. Okay, so that could be the start of our predominant section. It does go to what sounds like a dominant sound going to Sol, so likely a 5 or 5/7 of 5. So I would say this is probably our first strong predominant. I'll just put a question mark there. Again, this is making guesses and then investigating. And then this is probably the start of our dominant section here. So let's actually do this. And then we'll do there and then tonic. Okay, why don't you actually pause the video, take a few seconds, think through what chord options would be likely, and then let's listen for the soprano, and you're going to investigate a little bit further. Okay, welcome back. So let's give the soprano a try, 2 listenings. Okay, what kind of cadence do we have? Back it up and listen if you need to. Okay, soprano, take 2. All right, ready for the answer? So let's take a look at the soprano. Okay, ready? And here it is. So Do, Te, that actually confirms that this is a 3 chord. Because I didn't get into this in a previous video, but if it was T, then it would be an augmented chord. It would make A, C sharp, E sharp, which would be an augmented quality triad, and it would sound really weird. So for the 3 chord, we leave the 7th scale degree lowered, so as te. So we're going do, te, te. Another clue that it actually can't be a 5 or a 5/7 because those would have T, right? So we're gonna get rid of that and just say it is a 5/6/5/5. In all likelihood, unless we're proved different by some crazy magic, that's it. So do, te, te, lay makes sense. Lay again makes sense. La, so that lay becomes la. That will make sense in a minute. We actually raised 2 notes for the applied of 5 in minor. Don't worry too much about it right now. Just the important thing is that you heard that chromaticism, that half step from la, lay to la, and now we go to T, okay, because that's part of our usual treatment in minor, to have te become T for a 5 chord, which we're in our dominant section. So, and then another T. So that suggests to me that this repeated sol is not a cadential 6/4, but that it is some 5 to another kind of 5 to tonic. Okay, so again, pause the video, sketch out the rest of the chords, think through where do I need to be listening for different options, and we'll come back to it. So let's do 2 listenings for chord quality, and then we're gonna wrap this up. Okay, again, I'm gonna slow it down just a bit. Last listening. Okay, got it. Back up and get more listenings if you need to. Let's take a look at the whole thing. And 3, 2, 1, here you go. I'm actually gonna have it play in the background while I talk through this. 1, major 3, 5, 6, 5 of 6, 6, minor 4, 5 of 5, 5, 5, 7, 1. Okay, so we get that alternative opening with the 1 to the 6, and you get that 5, 6, 5 of 6, coloring that in. Okay, so again, the key to identifying that is the te, listening for that resolving down and the consistency there. Also, the likelihood that the 3 would go to a 5/7 is like, that's not so much a thing. So I would say if you see something like this and you know this is a 3 chord, it's going to be a 5, 6, 5, a 6. Now, if this was a 1, 6, just get fancy with it. Let's listen to that. Okay, so that versus very different. Okay, so then we've got the minor 4, and then this here, G, B sharp, D sharp. So we do need that D raised, otherwise it would be a weird not triad. Okay, so we raise both the 3rd and the 5th scale degree when you have a 5 of 5 in minor. Now, you would have needed to hear too that wasn't a 5/7. So the difference between a 5, G, B sharp, D, and a 5/7. First of all, that would change our voice leading. So that F would have to go down to the E sharp. So that clue that you've got the D sharp going up to an E sharp is a big clue. That would really change everything in there. So I'm not going to mess around with that now, but that's a good clue. That G sharp, that's just a courtesy accidental. So you've got the 5 of 5, just a triad going to the 5, to a 5-7, C, E, G, B natural, C sharp, E sharp, G sharp, B natural, going to the tonic chord. Okay. All right, that's it. So go do your practice however you're going to do it. And don't feel free to leave me a comment below. Any requests that you have for videos, I'd love to hear them. And don't forget to subscribe and like this video. It does help me out so much. And I thank you, and share me with your friends. Okay, talk to you later. Bye.